Well, it's time again for the weekly discussion of how the technology of today impacts the world of tomorrow. This is the Fill in the Blank podcast, and I'm Ross Strader. I'm joined by my co-host Keith Abels, and we want you to join the conversation. You can reach us at AskFITB on Twitter, or you can email us at fitbpodcast@gmail.com. We would love to hear from you. Love to meet you out there in the social, digital, internet world. Keith, isn't that right?
The interweb, I think, is the word you're looking for. All right, so we took last week off, and so we didn't get to do our weekly pitch for Patreon. So in case you have forgotten, or in case you're a new listener, in that case, welcome. Let me tell you about Patreon. Patreon allows you to support our show on your terms. So you can contribute any amount that you want. You get to decide how much the Fill in the Blank podcast is worth to you. And so to do that, you go to patreon.com/FITB. And we still have the dollar challenge out there. And the dollar challenge, for those of you that don't know, is pretty simple. We know that your entertainment dollar sometimes can be stretched. And so what we would like to do, if you are willing and able, and we would encourage you to support our show, our own little startup with just two guys here, by contributing just $1 a month on patreon.com/FITB. It's only 3 cents a day. And we use this to fund our show, and that helps us grow our audience. We have some things set aside to upgrade our equipment, and for the time being, that's what our dollar challenge is funding. And with your support, we can do that. So we certainly appreciate everybody listening. If you're a first-time listener, welcome. If you're a long-time listener, welcome back. And if you haven't made that decision yet, we really would appreciate it if you would consider supporting our show at patreon.com/FITB.
Hey, so you're right. We didn't record last week. We recorded 2 weeks ago, and the question we left hanging in the air 2 weeks ago was we were making our predictions about if Apple was going to have an event or not. We both predicted Apple would have an event, but not. Can you even call this an event on March the 27th? What is this thing they're doing on March the 27th?
That's a great question. This is...
Did you get an invitation, by the way?
No, it must be lost in the mail. I had my mail stopped on spring break because we were on a trip.
Oh.
And, the mail has resumed, but sometimes things can get a little wonky. I can only imagine that my invitation maybe is lost somewhere out there amongst the mail that did not get delivered.
Yeah. Well, you probably would have had to sign for it, so it probably just got kicked back.
True.
Yeah.
So this is supposedly an education event. And so this is called, or the invitation that I did not get that I'm looking at online has the Apple logo, and it looks like it was written, with almost like a calligraphy pen. It's got pictures of iPads, and then it says, "Let's take a field trip." So it's an education event, and it's happening at a high school in Chicago. And Apple says it will, quote, reveal creative new ideas for teachers and students. And that's all we really know. I don't know what that means.
What's your bet that every kid in that high school walks away with an iPad?
Well, that's a pretty good bet.
That would be, that outdoes Oprah, right? She's never shown up at a high school and given all the kids something.
You mean President Winfrey?
Yes.
I don't know. So this is not the first time they've had an education event. It's been a while. The last one they did, I'm looking at 9 to 5 Mac here. The last one they did was on January 19th of 2012. And
that's what I thought, 2012.
At that point, what they did was announce some iBooks changes, some textbook changes, those sorts of things. But iBooks, I don't know that anybody uses iBooks anymore. So I don't know if that has anything to do with it. Clearly it's iPad related in some way because they've got a picture of the 9.7 inch, just kind of standard iPad, not the Pro. They've got a picture of that on the invitation. So I don't know if this means that they're introducing maybe a low cost iPad. They're already getting pretty low, but compared to Chromebooks, it's not even close. I would think this is going to be more software related. And, Apple has mentioned before Class Kit. So they have Health Kit, they have, Home Kit for Internet of Things at your home. And so they've got Class Kit, but I'll be honest with you, I don't know a whole lot about that. So to me, my best guess is this is going to be mostly software related, and there's a small chance that you may see some new hardware, but if so, it's going to be iPad related, and that would be it.
Well, so my prediction, I'm going to go on the record and say, I think it is going to be the next. I think it's going to be a big leap forward in. What is it? Swift, sort of that iPad playground to learn coding.
Right.
My guess is they're aiming at every teenager and teachers being equipped to begin to teach coding for iOS devices, for platforms, for phones, and that they're investing in that future right now because they become the great beneficiaries of it. I mean, if they increase the amount of people that are developing, apps and software for those environments, that benefits Apple in the long run.
It does. This is an uphill battle for them though, because they're getting their lunches eaten by Google and Chromebooks, right? So Google Classroom, Chromebooks. Apple is at the high end of the cost spectrum, and that is in direct opposition to everything that schools kind of have going for them. I mean, every dollar is so hard to come by in especially a public school.
Well, and it's technology, hardware that you have to upgrade.
You do, and
often.
You're right, and I don't know what all they can do here. I mean, it's great that any tech company is going to try to create solutions for education. I mean, in general, I'm supportive of that regardless of the company. I don't know what Apple can offer here that's going to make a lot of, especially public schools, maybe switch if they're in a Chromebook, Google Classroom kind of environment. I don't know what Apple can provide here that's going to overcome the biggest issues for schools. And to me, that is cost and maintenance and security, right? And so when I say maintenance and security, how do you deploy these things? So if you're a school district, if you're the IT administrator for a school district, you're concerned about keeping these things updated, right? So that security is not an issue. Well, guess what? Chromebooks, every time you turn it on, it updates with the latest version, period. There's nothing that you have to do on your end. They are very inexpensive. They come in all shapes and sizes. Multiple people can use one, right? So you can log out, log back in, and everybody's stuff is there. There are just so many benefits to Chromebooks that Apple just doesn't have the capability, or they haven't shown the willingness, to create those kinds of tools. I don't know. I mean, it'd be great if they have lower cost iPads and all that, but it's going to take a lot more than a cheap iPad, I think, to get school districts fully on board here.
I totally agree. And it's not just Apple's problem, it's Microsoft's problem
sure.
too. I don't know if you saw that, it's unrelated, but, Airbus just dropped their whole Microsoft deal, and over the next 2 years, completely transitioning into a Google Apps world for collaboration. And I mean, when they asked them, is this a cost-related deal for, somebody like Airbus? It wasn't. Didn't have anything to do with cost. It had to do with how can we eliminate so many steps in the process, and that is we're just going to have people collaborate directly rather than these, where you send, maybe 1,000 emails or more over a project trying to keep up with all that. Real-time collaboration just happens, and you don't have to do it. And Apple doesn't have that solved either. I mean, they don't, all the page, you can collaborate with Pages and all of those things, but mostly that works with the handoff of 2 or 3 of your own devices. They still are nowhere near where Google is in the ability to collaborate, not just to the student that sits next to you in the classroom, but a student sitting across the world,
Right. So. Yeah. So Microsoft has collaboration tools built into Office. You're right. Apple has collaboration tools built into, their software suite, but they're all so far behind. I mean, Google had such a head start. And the other thing with this is, with Apple, if you're using Pages or Keynote or Numbers, that's great that you can collaborate with others, but you all have to have an Apple device. And that is an issue. And with Google, I can have any device I want. I can have a Windows computer, I can have a Chromebook, I can have an iPad, I can have an iPhone, I can have an Android phone. It does not matter. And when you open it up like that I don't know. We'll see. Maybe I'm wrong.
I don't know. I mean, so you and I are certainly, Apple fanboys, obviously, and we probably both have copies of Microsoft Word on our computers, and yet for this show, for what we do, for the the collaboration and the kind of work, we use Google. I mean, we have a Google Doc open. That's how we, keep up with the show, and we're not using Pages, we're not using Word. We're we're using Google Docs because it really is simple and it really does work.
So, hey, Google, if you'd like to sponsor the show, patreon.com/FITB.
Yeah, that was like a free commercial for Google.
Really
we probably
was.
shouldn't give that out anymore. Yeah,
It really was.
Well, speaking of, speaking of iPads, you traveled last week, had a little time away. Where'd you go?
Well, we took the family to Disney in California. We did a kind of LA, Anaheim, and then San Diego kind of trip. So we had all the theme parks in LA, Anaheim, Universal, Disney. Went down to San Diego, Legoland, San Diego Zoo. So we spent a really good week out on the West Coast.
And iPads in Disneyland. I don't know if we talked about it on the show, but I think we talked about it offline.
We did.
We talked about it. All right. So iPads and Disneyland. What was your experience?
Okay. So I have noticed over the last however many years that we've had iPads, which is a long time now, right? I don't know. I don't remember when the first iPad came out, but it's been forever ago. There are so many people, especially in these, kind of touristy hotspots, that take pictures with their freaking iPads. And I have no idea why. And now it's been a while since I've been on, one of those kinds of trips. So, I thought, I bet I see people taking pictures at Disneyland with their iPads. And guess what? I was right. It wasn't just one, it was multiple. Probably 3 or 4 different people were taking pictures at various times with their iPads.
So let me ask you this question. Are they just carrying them around, or is there some kind of iPad sling that goes around your neck that, or is it just tucking it, taking their hand, tucking it under their arm and walking around an amusement park?
I have no idea where they keep this damn iPad. I have a 7 Plus, the larger iPhone.
Yeah.
And, I'm going on, roller coasters and stuff, and I'm making sure that thing's tucked away so it doesn't come flying out. I don't know what they do with their iPad when they go on a ride.
I can't imagine.
Because you see them holding it up and taking the picture, and what I didn't do because I'm rolling my eyes or, saying whatever, I don't see what they do with it after they take the picture, but I have no idea. Now, mainly this is the general age of somebody that does this is a little older. Yeah. So maybe those are people that aren't going on a ride at all. Maybe they're there. I don't know. I'm not sure why you use a giant iPad to take pictures. I get that it's got a bigger screen on it, but come on.
But the camera's not better. The camera's not better than probably most of the phones they have in their pockets.
Of course not. So just as I predicted. So again, Ross, we say it on the show and it happens the next week. So people are still using iPads to take pictures. Hey, if you're out there and you use your iPad to take pictures, will you just let us know why? I will not make fun of you like on our show. I will definitely make fun of you off air and probably with Ross, but I will not do it on the show. But I really want somebody to tell me, here's why I use my iPad to take pictures instead of my phone. If you have an iPad, I guarantee you've got a smartphone. Whether it's an iPhone or an Android phone or whatever, it doesn't matter. You've got a smartphone. And it's probably got a really good camera on it.
Yeah, and I guarantee you, though, if you're using your iPad for that, you've got a reason that you're doing it. So I'm with you, Keith. Yeah, let us know what's the reason. What are we missing about photography with our iPads? I am fascinated. Did you get a picture of anybody taking a picture with an iPad?
No, I didn't, but I'll try to do that next time I see it.
Gosh, that would be fun. That would be great. We really need one of those for the fill in the blank page. All right, well, let's get into the show. We got it. There's so many things to talk about. I mean, fill in the blank is a crystal ball. I mean, that's what we're doing. We're looking into technology of the day, how it impacts the world of tomorrow. We really, Keith, this show's a crystal ball. It happens every week. The things we talk about. end up flying all over the news. And there's too much to talk about, but there is one thing that really deserves some attention, and I do want to ask you about, because I think I understand it, and then at the other end of it, I don't think I understand it at all, and it terrifies me what the ramifications might be. So this is not a doomsaying show. Listen, we're examining what's happening today, asking how it affects the world tomorrow. We're not doing that as naysayers or, we're not into the earthers. But I am telling you the ramifications of this story that are unfolding. This is, I think people, as they're becoming aware of it, are absolutely shocked that this is real. Now, we've all guessed it. We've all joked about, what data mining companies, what databases, what social media is gathering about us. But to see it played out and how it was used, I don't know. I mean, to me, it gives me a huge pause.
Yeah, so what you're referring to is the breaking news of Cambridge Analytica using Facebook data to impact elections. This is not unique to the U.S. Most of the articles that we're reading and refer to the United States just because, right? And this is a big deal on several levels, and it's kind of confusing because there are multiple issues at play here. And, the synopsis is this. This company, Cambridge Analytica, is a political research company, right? So that's what they do. They're a political firm and a political data firm. And what they do is they help political campaigns with their social media strategies, online strategies using data, which is pretty normal. Kind of like Google, and Amazon use your web browsing history and all that kind of stuff to position ads and all that kind of stuff. So that's what they do, right? So they gather data and they use big data as it relates to voters, right? And they use that to create these online campaigns and so on and so forth, right? So on the surface, there's nothing wrong with that, right? If you have issues with that, then you probably have issues with pretty much everything on the web. Where this kind of gets weird is how this company, Cambridge Analytica, came to possess some data from Facebook and then what they did with it. So you've got two sides to the story. You've got the kind of behavior from Facebook, right, and the things that led to this issue. So Facebook kind of has some blame here. And then you've got Cambridge Analytica that certainly, has issues here and could quite possibly for both of them be in some legal trouble. But for sure, Cambridge Analytica. So here's what they did. I'm going to kind of paraphrase part of an article from The Atlantic. We'll link to it in the show notes. So in June of 2014, a researcher named Alexander Kogan developed a personality quiz for Facebook. And I'm sure you've seen those personality quizzes. I hate those. People take them and then they shove them in your face like, oh, look how smart I am. I got 19 of these 20 questions right. And I knew who the third president was and blah, 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 blah. Yeah. Right? Yeah. So they did one of those personality quizzes. And about 270,000 people installed this little app, right? So you can install little apps on your Facebook account, right? So a little over 250,000 people participated in this and installed this on Facebook. Okay. So they were doing the survey. However, at the time, though, Facebook allowed developers to, when they got the information from those 270,000 people, right, their little quiz results and all that kind of stuff, Facebook had a policy at the time that also gave those developers access to all of their friends. So now you've got the network effect of 270,000 people and all of their friends. Okay, so I am 99% sure that those people did not realize they were giving up data on all of their friends to this company just by taking a quiz. So that's like super leaky data from Facebook.
And if you pause for a second, those weren't the only people gathering data on Facebook at the time.
Oh, no.
Which means they weren't the only ones doing it.
So So what happens is when the app got the data, it saved it into a database instead of immediately deleting it, which that was a violation of Facebook terms. So what's weird is Facebook at the time would give you access to the data, you just weren't supposed to save it. Now, how would they know? Right? How do they police that? I'm going to give you this data. So what this really resulted in was they built a private database containing very detailed information of 50 million Facebook users.
Golly. Well, so we looked it up. 129 million people voted in the last election. So you're talking about, what is that, 40%? And I'm not saying 40% of voters, but I'm saying it's 40% of the number of a total voter number. I mean, 50 million people. That's a huge data points.
Yeah. From those 50 million people, Cambridge Analytica formed 30 million psychographic profiles about voters. So what they do is they take when you respond to one of these surveys, the individual questions aren't really significant. It's the patterns in the data at a large scale that are significant. So for example, all the stuff that you like on Facebook, right? Over time, that kind of builds a profile of you, right? So if I looked at all the stuff that somebody over the course of their Facebook history, all the things that they had liked, you'd get a pretty good idea of maybe their political leanings, the things they like to do for hobbies, the places they like to shop, that kind of stuff, right? Is that fair?
Sure.
Right? So if you just looked at just likes, things you liked, and then when you start pairing that with where places where you say you are, right? So you can say, oh, Ross is at, and you put the name of the restaurant you're at or whatever. So then you've got location data, and Facebook's always checking your location, always. So you've got location data with your personal likes. Then you start answering these quizzes, and you're giving them very specific answers to questions. And when you start tying all that together, and you can, if you have a big enough data sample, you can start putting all those data points together to build some pretty reliable profiles. So we know that, for example, people that like this thing, we'll call it X, people that like X, that also go to Y location and this kind of stuff, they tend to be this kind of voter, or they tend to like these things and dislike these other things. You can start putting those data points together to form some very, very good profiles. And then you can use that information to do campaigns that try to achieve whatever it is you're trying to achieve. In this case, it was a political campaign. So they're taking people that may fit a profile that they think are likely to vote a certain way and push them over the top, like kind of guarantee that they're going to vote that way. You could take people that maybe were, the other way and maybe convince them not to vote. You can do all kinds of stuff. Now, it's a campaign of influence. And so the way that they go about this certainly violated some of Facebook's terms. Facebook being leaky with their data is terrible, but what else is new? That's what they do. But what you can't do, I don't think you can do, I don't think you can quantify the actual impact that this has. And so, this gets into a political story because it's inherently political, because this firm is a political company. But, what I would be cautious of in all this is, what impact does this have, or what impact did this have on the electorate, and how many, people were persuaded this way or that way based on these tactics and this basically illegally obtained data, right? So I don't know what that is. I do know this was creepy. I do know that the company that did this, Cambridge Analytica, is probably going to be in some legal trouble, because it's not just the U.S. that they've done this in. They've done this in multiple countries. So they've probably got some serious legal issues on the horizon. Facebook may as well. Their stocks tanked, I think, 12% over the last couple of days because of this.
Yeah, stop right there for a second. If your income tanked 12%, so you lost overnight, Keith Abel's 12% of what you had. That's significant. I think that's significant on any scale, right?
Oh, for sure. Regardless of what your level of income is, a 12% hit is significant.
Well, here's three things. So, think about this. And I think what what shocks me but doesn't shock me. I mean, so we talked about it in episode 6, and you can go listen to it. But we talked about, sort of humans gaining their humanity, and we talked about the ethics, and that ethics are not keeping up or keeping pace with sort of this social media world and the social media dynamic. It's just not keeping pace, and so maybe it never will. I don't know, but it's a shame that data like this, and I get it. I mean, somebody ought to track data. I think that's fine. It could have been used for so much good, and yet it was just at the bottom line was entirely fueled by greed, and I think that's what part of. So one of the things they claim, this is what Cambridge Analytica claims. They claim, and they may be right, that so what you like on Facebook and over a period of time, what you like and where you go and what you visit and all those things, that they are able to build a psychological profile about you where they know you better than your friends and family know you because of what you like and where you go. Secondly, so that's the first point of it. Secondly, listen to this quote from Alexander Nix. And the quote's right there on the Wikipedia page, but the quote is actually all over the internet. I mean, it's kind of becoming an infamous quote now. Today in the United States, we have somewhere close to, just let this sink in for a second, somewhere close to 4,000 or 5,000 data points on every individual. So we model the personality of every adult across the United States, some 230 million people. That's phenomenal. So first, they know you better than your friends and family, or that's what they claim. Secondly, they have data points on you that you didn't even know existed. And then thirdly, they're able to take that, and the market term, the industry term is behavioral micro-targeting. So they can so specifically target to you, and with that, not just sell you products, but influence how you think, and like you said, push you over the edge, push you one way, push you another way, depending on, who's paying for the service, who's paying for the push. That's unsettling.
Oh, for sure. Okay, 4,000 or 5,000 data points on every individual. I didn't even know I had that many data points.
Of course you didn't. And I mean, how seemingly innocent does it seem, to run across a Facebook feed, to like a few things because it made you laugh, or you like the person, so you like their thing. I mean, but all of that, unbeknownst to you, is revealing things about you that I think if you knew that was being collected, you might not do that. You might not be so cavalier or casual about it.
Oh, hell no. And this is part of the kind of the learning process as we move from kind of the early stages of these types of services into a more educated kind of base of users. So ultimately, this is good because people now start to realize what their data is being used for. And I think for a long time, most of us, myself included, have been, for the most part, okay with the trade of, I'm going to use these free services for either productivity or entertainment or staying in touch with friends and family or whatever. I'm going to use all those for free in exchange for some of my data, right? That's the trade.
Right.
So that's the trade we make with Google all the time.
And then you can expect to be, I think, reasonably advertised or marketed based upon what they collect. I think we all are in a social contract to agree to that.
Right. Okay. So I think most people at least understand the basic premise behind that. What I don't think people understand, and quite honestly with you, I mean, I knew these companies have a lot of data on us, but when I hear perhaps the creepiest quote I've ever heard that you just said from the CEO of this company, that we've got somewhere close to 4,000 or 5,000 data points on every individual. So they have a model of the personality of every adult across the United States. That is a level of creepy that I don't think most people comprehended before. So now it becomes like, I'm being manipulated, right? So it's like when you watch a broadcast channel, television channel, right? You watch NBC or CBS or whatever. Then there's commercials, right? You don't pay for those channels, right? You don't.
Right.
Okay. So the trade there is kind of the same thing. So this is not new. So you watch those shows, and in an hour-long show, there's probably 15 to 20 minutes worth of commercials. That's the trade. I don't have to pay anything for the content, but they are going to advertise to me. And they know that if I watch this channel, then I'm likely, interested in these products or services or whatever. Okay, that's fine. That process didn't scrape, which is a terrible word, scrape all this data and build these profiles on me like you can do online. And so as we take that model that everybody knows from television and apply it to our digital world, our online world, there is so much more content that we are just readily giving up. So much information that we are readily giving up that is then used to manipulate us at a pretty serious level, apparently. We are going to have to decide, as a society, how much of that we're willing to accept. And I guarantee you the lack of these companies kind of policing this themselves is going to lead to somebody else policing it for them. And if you look at countries in Europe, for example, that already have a pretty serious case of what I like to call techno-panic. I stole that from Jeff Jarvis, who's on another podcast I listen to, and a journalism professor, this techno-panic.
Mm-hmm.
The European countries are pretty anti-American tech companies, and this is not going to help them at all. But the Americans have been pretty loose with the not regulating a bunch of things. We'll let the market figure it out. That's kind of who we are as a country, right? And that's okay.
Yeah.
But this stuff like this, I think, proves that maybe we do need some legislation, or at least some formal guidelines or some penalties or something in place to make sure that our data is being used in the way that we agree as a society it should be used.
Yeah. Which is a big thing for you to say, because, so I've brought it up several times. Yeah, somebody's got to legislate this. And I know you're the first to say, man, we don't want the government doing that. But when you see this and you realize how unrestrained and uninhibited it is, and there has been no accountability or even accounting of how the data has been used, that's alarming to me. And
oh yeah, and I agree. Typically, I don't like government intervention in tech issues because our government officials are so ignorant on technology in general. They're the last people I want really involved in the weeds on this stuff, right? They can't figure out how to, send their dirty pictures on Twitter without it being a story, right? They can't figure out how to run their own email server without the world finding out about it and all that crap. So they are not, for the most part, technically literate people. So why on earth would I want them writing some rules for tech companies? But something's got to be
I'll
done.
tell you this. I think the next presidential election will hear people talking about not just domestic policy and foreign policy. I think we'll add a third in the next presidential election. It'll be a technology policy, because that really, it transcends the world. What American tech companies do affect what's going on in the world. What Indian tech companies are doing affect what's going on in the world. And we'll have to have a president that's savvy enough, or can find people and lead people savvy enough, to have a technological position, a policy, domestic, foreign, and technological, that has got to be a part of the consideration, as we elect leaders moving forward. And I think this illustrates, and it's too bad they're not using this for good. And so maybe people are using it for good, but I guarantee you, if it's not this week or next month, we'll find out that, pharmaceutical companies are using this data to influence, diagnosis and prescriptions. And, so we already know they have some data they're working with. It's alarming to think how much data we've given up that we didn't know, and secondly, how that's been being used.
Yeah, so the article I was reading from earlier on The Atlantic, they talk about that exact issue. And so I'll just kind of paraphrase again here. Facebook has allowed third-party app developers to access some private user data since May of 2007, when it first opened the Facebook platform. Users must consent to giving apps their data, which they always do. They say yes without reading it, right? But sometimes, as in the case of Kogan's app, that was the little quiz he built, developers can access data about a consenting user's friends without getting those friends' consent. So that's an issue right off the bat. So that's a structural issue with how Facebook, contains, or in this case, doesn't contain their data.
And you can't put that back in the jar. It's already out
there. That's exactly right. And it goes on to say, during the ensuing decade, Facebook has occasionally tweaked how much data apps can access. But over that time, how many developers abided by Facebook's rules? How many of them followed this other guy's route and then caching that data and making their own private databases? And where is that information now?
Yeah.
And if all of this, so I mentioned earlier, you can't, 100% say that because they used this data, it impacted an election. Okay, fair. But if it didn't, why do these political campaigns pay so much money to use it time and time again? Why do they keep doing it if it's not effective? So I have to believe there is a measurable impact, even though we can't measure it. There is an impact that this has on whether it's elections, political discourse for sure, right? Creating these wedges between people that otherwise would not have existed, which is kind of what politics is all about, sadly. And there's just so many issues with this. And I've been trying to be really careful, but not tying this to a political candidate, because although this information was used by multiple political campaigns across the world, the biggest issue at the heart of it is how this company built this tool to take advantage of basically not really a loophole, but to kind of exploit a vulnerability in the Facebook platform. And I call it a vulnerability because they didn't have any safeguards against it. They didn't really think proactively, or maybe they did and said, well, it's no big deal if they use it. So this company capitalized on this vulnerability to have a pretty significant impact on different issues across the globe. So you've got the Facebook issue and their leaky data, and you've got the Cambridge Analytica issue of them just implementing this in the first place and taking all this data and then creating these profiles and using it against the electorate. That's a major issue.
It is, and it makes you wonder what some of these other social media companies are doing right now, because I imagine if Facebook's guilty of it, and I say guilty, I don't mean, so guilt is probably the wrong word.
No, they're guilty.
All right, well, so they're guilty. But I mean, you have to think, so Twitter, social media platform, which I have no reason to hate Twitter. I use Twitter. I like Twitter. It's a great news feed. Okay. But everything you put out on Twitter, somebody's mining that data. Somebody's collecting data points about the things that you like or you retweet or the things you talk about. They can tell what you're watching by what you hashtag and conversations you join. And so I guess we ought to know that. I guess we ought to be people that realize that. But when you listen to this, it ought to make all of us step back and be a little cautious about how much of our life and what we do and are we giving away. And not that everybody has a bunch of secrets they're trying to keep. I'm not even saying that. But that data then is turned around and used on us to manipulate us in a way or to cause us to think in some way maybe that, that seemingly nobody had the ability to do 20 years ago. And there is a very big ethical crisis. And I mean, just think, so I don't know. I mean, it makes me think, your Gmail. I mean, is somebody collecting data about the things you send, things you read? And I know it's all, supposedly all private, but somebody has that. It all lives out there somewhere. Google and Yahoo and all of these, what is exactly being collected and where it's being collected, and who knows the kind of conversations Alexa's listening to while you're standing in your kitchen and you think she's turned off. I mean, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, and I don't think that. But when I hear things like this, it makes me wonder, what exactly are we, what exactly have we given ourselves into? And then, where does it go? A Minority Report came to my mind. So we have, 4,000 to 5,000 data points on every individual. So now we're going to be able to predict behavior, not just do behavioral micro-targeting, but now we're going to get into the, the algorithms of predicting behavior, and, where does it stop? I just went Minority Report. I promise this is not a conspiracy theory show. I'm not a wacko. I'm simply drawing the line out from here. That's all I'm trying to do.
Well, I agree. And about this, you're not a wacko. I'll tell you, I want to see my 4,000 or 5,000 data points.
I'd like to see your 4,000 or 5,000 data points too. I want to see yours.
To see those, like mine specifically, and see what they know about me. I would love to see that. At some point, they could be compelled to turn that over.
I think they ought to. Maybe that is part of the solution. Here's the data we have on you. Here's your, 1,000-page document. This is what we've collected on you. If somebody turned around and gave that to me, that'd be fascinating. That'd be better than any personality profile you could read. And, okay, that's fair. You took all this, now user beware,
Yep.
I think that's a great idea, Keith.
All right. I'll send an email. I'll get right on that.
You heard that here on Fill in the Blank.
The CEO of this company, though, he may not be able to get back to me in a reasonable amount of time, considering he was suspended today.
Yeah, and I imagine anything he's getting back to, somebody's reading somewhere right now. I doubt. I imagine all his data points are being collected right now. Is my guess.
I am sure.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's quit ranting about that. It does intersect with episode 6 if you're interested. We did address ethics and sort of social media in this technological environment that we're in, and where do we go? And so this is another, this is a follow-on on that, but a very specific case. But let's get on to some happier things. Let's talk about the fill-in-the-blank check. Keith, this week, what's your blank check?
All right. So do you remember when Apple took the headphone jack off the iPhone? Do you remember? It was...
Yeah, I do. I remember that.
It was a couple phones ago. Whatever it was. Whenever it was. Doesn't matter. Everybody complained about it. I am still not a fan of that. I would love to have a headphone jack. I have heard, I've heard scenarios from people that have had this issue. This is not a new issue where, okay, I'm listening to my headphones through the Lightning port because that's the only input I have to plug headphones into.
Because I'm the poor soul that doesn't have a pair of AirPods.
Right.
AirPods.
What
are they called?
Right. AirPods. Yeah. Okay. But my phone's dying. Like my battery needs to be charged. What do I do? I've only got one way to charge it and one way. That port is only good for, I can only do one thing at a time there. And so I've never been in a situation where that has been an issue to where I couldn't resolve it. So in the car, it's plugged in and you're just, you're Bluetoothing over, whatever, right?
Yes.
So you've got power and then you're either Bluetoothing it or using CarPlay if your car has it or whatever. So that really hasn't ever been an issue. I have AirPods, and I use those for 90% of audio. Well, on this trip we took last week, it didn't happen to me, but it happened to my daughter. And her phone was getting low on battery. We're on the plane, and she's needing to, she's got her headphones plugged in because you're on a plane, right?
Yeah.
And she had no way to deal with it. There was no way. So she has a set of headphones. She has a set of little Beats headphones, and it uses the little adapter that Apple gives you. So they're 3.5 millimeter headphones. So you put the little adapter on it that converts that 3.5 millimeter plug to a lightning port,
Right.
Because there's no 3.5 millimeter jack on her phone.
A dongle.
A dongle. Yes, you're using the little dongle. So she has that, and she's like, "Daddy, my phone is, doesn't have much battery left. I need to charge it." I was like, "Okay, well, just use the charger." The plane had a charger. Great. Just plug it in. She goes, "But now I can't listen to my headphones." And then it struck me that I am going to have to break down and buy a couple of more dongles.
Yes.
And so my blank check of the week is the Belkin Rockstar. The name sounds a lot more glamorous than what this thing actually is, but it solves this specific problem. So the Belkin Rockstar, actually there's two different versions of it. The one I'll link to actually has, what you do is it's basically a splitter for your lightning port. So you plug this little dongle into your iPhone, right, into the lightning port, and then it's got a little nubby thing where you can plug two additional lightning items in. So one of them can be your headphones and the other can be a charger. So it takes your one lightning port and it changes it to two. And that allows you to solve the problem that we had on the plane. Now, in this case, even if you had AirPods, on a plane, you really kind of want some better headphones, right?
Yeah.
So on the plane, I use my over-the-ear headphones because the AirPods will work, but there's just a lot of noise in a plane.
Yeah, there is.
And, so you want some better headphones. So that doesn't quite solve that problem. So I'm ordering a couple of these just to throw in the bag. My dongle bag is getting pretty full. I've got to be honest with you. I've got so many stupid little adapters. I just realized how that sounded. Sorry. But this little Belkin Rockstar thing, I'm going to order a couple of them because I know I'll use them. I've gone a long time without having to actually directly deal with this problem. As usual, it happened to one of my kids. And, once it happens to your kids, you really get pissed off, like, I got to solve this problem.
Yeah.
I can't have this, right? So anyway, Belkin Rockstar. They do make another version of it that's a lightning and a headphone jack, the traditional headphone jack. So if you prefer that, you can use those. So they make two different versions. I think I'm going to order just the double lightning one. So it is between $35 and $40 depending on where you buy it. And, so I'll probably go ahead and order one of these. I may order a second one pretty soon because if it's an issue for one kid, it's going to be an issue for the other kid soon. And I am 1,000,000% surprised this is not happening to my wife at this point, because that's who it usually would happen to.
I mean, I should see what you think about it, because I have it pulled up here. You're going to have a link to it in the show notes. What's interesting about it? Yes, it does. It goes from one lightning port to two, but it does not support an audio split. So you can't plug in two sets of headphones in it. You can plug in headphones, and then you can plug in power or something else, but it won't sync your data. So that's interesting. It just made me think, I wonder if you can split audio out of those lightning ports anymore. Surely you can.
I think technically you can. I don't know why you couldn't. For whatever reason, the implementation. So the lightning port, there's a little chip inside a lightning cable that tells it what to do. So it's not just a dumb port. There's a little chip in there that basically directs traffic and tells whatever's being plugged into whatever other thing, kind of tells it what it can or can't do. So this is a design implementation, not a lack of capability in the technology. Yeah. So you can listen to music and charge it, but you can't listen to two audio sources out of the double lightning thing. So there are some limitations. For the example that I gave, it would be fine because I could accomplish both the things I wanted to accomplish.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't really want to share my music with anybody. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I know. Hey, so you've got big news. We've talked about this next thing quite a few times. I've resisted. I've been very good, and I've had some weak moments. I'll be honest.
Yeah.
I've had those times where I almost gave in, but you finally gave in this week.
I did. I have the iPhone 10, iPhone X. What are we supposed to call it? X?
10.
X or 10? All right. 10. I've got the iPhone. Got the iPhone 10. I don't have a home button. It is actually larger than my 6S, 6 Plus screen. So larger than that, but a smaller phone. And I think that is brilliant. I have not had any problems adjusting. So it took me about a half a day to, kind of figure that out, or find a new groove, I guess, for my iPhone. But man, I'm no looking back. I do not miss a home button. It is so fast. It is so powerful. It's the best iPhone I've ever had, and I've had a lot of iPhones. Let me just say, I got a drawer full of old iPhones.
That sounded like you should be on stage at a keynote. It's the best iPhone I've ever had. If you had a British accent and we're sitting in a perfectly white room
with a pipe, could I have a pipe and some scotch too?
Go for it.
I'm so surprised. I love it. And I went so I was an early adopter of the Plus, which I always thought big phones were dumb. And then I got a big phone, and I thought, well, I can never live without a big phone. But here's what I really like about the iPhone X. And you were talking about, having your iPhone at Disneyland. This one is really the right size. This is the right size. Fits in your pocket, but the screen's bigger. It is much easier to manage, one-handed. It's great. And the screen is absolutely brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. And I don't even notice the notch. The notch is not even a thing. I thought it would be a thing. It's not a thing. Not for me anyway.
The notch thing kind of died down fairly quickly.
Yeah.
And actually there's a lot of other devices now that are kind of copying the notch just from a design standpoint, even though they don't necessarily need it. They just kind of build it in there for whatever reason. So it's funny how what started off as what some perceived as a design flaw kind of turned out to be an iconic component of that design.
Yeah, I think it's great. And I'll say this, in my experience with Face ID has been, I have been so impressed. So I wear eyeglasses. So when I did the Face ID recognition deal, I had my glasses on. Well, I use a different pair of glasses for reading. I also have sunglasses. There's times I have a hat on, and in all of those settings, it has never failed to recognize me, whether it's my sunglasses, my reading glasses, no glasses, hat on, even in the dark. So even when I'm, walking down the hall at night and it's dark, I take my phone up, the light from the screen lights my face enough for Face ID to be able to recognize me and open my phone.
All right. So Face ID, the front-facing camera obviously has a lot of improvements. Tell me, though, what your first Animoji was.
I haven't even done one yet. I knew you were going to ask me that.
No, you are lying.
I haven't. I'm going to send you, right after we finish doing this show, I'm going to send you an Animoji. I was just thinking about that. I knew your build-up, and to be completely honest, I've had this thing for a week, and I forgot all about Animojis. Absolutely.
You didn't, okay. Let me ask you this. People that get the iPhone 10.
Yeah.
I have to think that so Animoji is kind of it's one of those features that helps. It's great in ads. I don't know how many people actually use it after the first week.
Right.
First week or two after the novelty wears off. I got to think there's a very high percentage of people doing the poo Animoji as their first one. Right?
I don't.
Is that
even
a guy
know.
thing? I mean, because I just of all of them.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got the lion and you've got the monkey or whatever, and but come on, everybody's doing that, right?
I really think there could be cooler Animojis. I'm surprised there's not. Maybe there are. I don't know. I will say, here's what I did do. The Clips app. Do you have Clips on your iPhone?
I do.
Clips.
I've played with it. I've made some, the occasional little video using Clips. I think it's different. I think it's different on the iPhone 10. I think it might be a little different, but maybe not. It's very Snapchatty to me. And what I mean by that, it's kind of confusing and not intuitive.
It's not, and I have no idea what to do with it. Honestly, I played with it for a little bit, but I will tell you what I was able to do. So in Star Wars where when R2-D2 shows the picture of the sort of plays this little picture of Princess Leia, Obi-Wan.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they have this deal in the scene. You can adjust the clip. It's talking to your camera somehow, and then you look like you're a hologram. I did that. I did hologram, and I was on I was aboard the Millennial Falcon as a hologram. I'll send you a screenshot of that too.
Nice.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome.
That's kind of like Photo Booth. Don't they have that in Photo Booth? Something similar to that?
I don't know.
I don't think they can put you in a Star Wars scene, but
I forget about photo booth. But yeah, I think it does do that. It can put you in the middle of a scene, like Paris in the background or something like that. But this is pretty awesome. It really is phenomenally cool what you could do with it. And if you had skills and we're making videos and Snapchats and all that stuff, I am sure this takes all of that to an entirely new level of creativity. I think it's pretty cool. It really is.
Or you could just give it to a 13-year-old and they'd have it figured out in 3 seconds.
They'd have it figured out. They know exactly what to do with it and where to post it and why. And have 20 likes before you.
All right. Well, welcome to September of last year.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm just kidding. Well, I'm even further behind. I have a 7+. I didn't mean so. Just kind of joking because I'm even further behind.
And I need to be the first to say I don't need it. I mean, I was.
Of course you don't. We don't need any of this stuff.
No, we don't. But
look what we do with it. Look what we do with it when we get nice things.
I know.
Right? We get 15,000 data points on every person in the country. This is why we can't have nice things. Well, congrats. Okay, I do have one follow-up question on your iPhone 10.
Yeah.
So you like to rock your iPhone bareback. Well, that didn't sound right either. You don't put a case on your.
I don't put a case on your phone. I have no.
Did you put a case on your? I don't know which one you got, but it's very expensive. So
it is, but I don't have a case on it.
Really?
I still don't. I know.
Okay.
I bought the insurance instead.
Okay, so that's your case. That's fine.
My case.
I'm just curious.
$8 a month insurance, which is a total waste of money. But I have had a bunch of cases. I got a drawer full of cases. I don't really like them. Oh, but I did get a wireless charger. I bought a
nice,
a non-Apple wireless charger because turns out
there's not one.
And it works so and so. It drives me crazy if my phone buzzes or vibrates or whatever. It vibrates off the charger, so it may just be. No, it drives. So it may just be that I bought a cheap one, on Amazon. I did not get the Cadillac charger, so that may have to do with it. Maybe it's just the make of the wireless charger. But I have noticed that it'll slide itself off if somebody texts me. Then all of a sudden it's not charging anymore. So
right. All right, cool. Well, congrats, man. Hope you enjoy it.
Thank you. And with that, I think it's time to conclude this week's discussion of how the technology of today impacts the world of tomorrow. Thanks for listening. We are so glad you are. We're so glad you're listening. Remember, this is Fill in the Blank podcast, and we want to invite you to the Fill in the Blank $1 challenge. Your support goes a long way. We will see you again here next week at Fill in the Blank.